Hi, welcome back to Fridays to the Future, the place for practicing your listening skills, learning new words, phrases, getting practice of listening to native level speakers of English. Okay, today we're going to be listening to a garden designer talking about her work. She's actually my mum. She knows what she's talking about. I'm going to teach you some of the phrases she uses in the interview first, and then we'll listen to the interview and you'll be equipped to understand a lot of the content. Okay, so our first phrase of the morning is to take inspiration from. It literally means to be reinvigorated, to get new life. You might think of it as sort of breathing in. Was it that way? For example, William Wordsworth, English poet of the 18th century, took inspiration from the natural beauty of the Lake District and its daffodils in particular. Okay, thanks, Oscar. A peninsula. It's like a long bit of land that you've got kind of sea on both sides. For example, the Southwest Peninsula in the UK is very beautiful. A peninsula. Okay. To set something off. Lots of different ways in which we can use the verb set. You can set off on a journey. You can set off a firework. You can set someone off. That means like you really annoy them. For example, Donald Trump really sets me off, or sets some people off, although sometimes it's amusing. But to set something off means like to provide a contrast in shape or color or flavor. You might use it a little bit like this. The blue really sets off the red in that painting, okay? To set off the contrast, okay? Maybe you can set off on a journey of discovery by pressing subscribe here now, so you continue getting these videos that I'm making for you. Okay, thanks. To pop up. Okay, we've got a picture of a jack-in-the-box. It means to spring up suddenly or quickly. Like, where did you pop up from, Henry? You might say to a friend or something, where did you come from? Or we might have a pop-up shop. A pop-up shop is something temporary in nature. A short-term shop, maybe in an interesting place. Thank you. A shrub just means like a bush. What a lovely shrub you have there. What's its name? Dormant means kind of like asleep, in a deep sleep. For example, luckily the volcano is dormant at the moment. Okay, no explosions today. A flower bed is like sort of a bank of flowers, an area of ground where you're going to plant all your flowers. You might say something like, what a stunning flower bed. Okay, or you might not. Hill. Hill is like a small mountain, so hilly, the adjective that goes with it, means an area that's got hills, yeah, some steep slopes. It's quite a hilly area. A barren patch. So a patch is like an area of land. Barren means unfertile. So a barren patch is like that bit of your garden where nothing grows. We can use it less literally. For example, how's it going with the castings, Benjamin? I might say something like, not great. I'm actually going through a bit of a barren patch at the moment. Okay, so barren, not producing much. Actually, I'm going through a great patch at the moment. Let's move on. A microclimate. So micro, very, very small. Like microscopic, so small that you need a microscope to look at it. A microclimate is an area that has weather conditions that are often different in the surrounding area. For example, I've put this picture of the gorge here, like right down in that valley bit. The weather might be different to up on the top bit. It's got its own microclimate. No two somethings are alike, like no two snowflakes are alike, no two flowers are alike. It means there are not two that are similar. Okay? Low maintenance. If something's low maintenance, it doesn't need a lot of work to keep it in good condition, to keep it working well. You can describe people as being high or low maintenance. Example, how's your new employee, Bill? Oh, pain, really high maintenance. Okay, high maintenance, low maintenance. A nursery garden. So a nursery is where young things are looked after, like children. Yeah. Obviously they're not things, boys and girls. So a nursery garden is where new and young plants are looked after. Maybe new species are sort of grown. My mum refers to the history of gardens, and that all these new plants and species were being brought back to England, and right near where the boats came in there were nursery gardens where they could be cared for, these new species. Okay, if you grow something on, you're like looking after it to help it grow. It's not a commonly used phrasal verb, so you don't really need to learn it. Perhaps more useful is the phrase to grow on someone, which means to start to like an idea. For example, how's the book? Oh, it's really growing on me. I'm really enjoying it, actually. Okay, to grow on someone. Yeah, good. Next, the in thing. I've got a picture of Gregory Porter here because he's got a song called I'm In With the In Crowd. So the in crowd are like the popular people. The in thing is the popular thing. Like this, yep. Let's make it more popular. Let's share it, spread the love. Okay, Oscar. Cultivars. This is another very specific gardening piece of terminology that you don't really need to know, but it means a plant that has been grown by selective breeding. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Like, I want a medium-sized dog, so I'm going to breed a big dog with a small dog. Okay. Or you could just choose two medium-sized dogs, slightly less complicated. Okay, if something is out in the open, then everybody knows about it. But out in the open can also mean out in the countryside, okay, in the green hills. I love being out in the open, breathing in the fresh air. Put a picture of some sort of glossy magazines. If a story is out in the open, okay, everyone knows. Cool, what's next? Yeah, well, if you learned something, if you enjoy these, as I've said, subscribe, share. Okay, let's go straight to the interview now and see about listening to those words in context. Good morning and welcome to Fridays to the Future with myself, Benjamin, and our very special guest today, Muff Dudgeon from Muff Dudgeon Garden Designs. So, welcome, Muff. Now, first question to you. You're based in the southwest of the UK, which is famous for some fantastic gardens. Is there one in particular that you enjoy and take inspiration from?
Yes, my probably favourite garden is a garden called Trelisic, which is southeast of Truro. It's a National Trust garden, and it's a very beautiful position and content. I've been there hundreds of times, and I love going every single time because there's something new that you see. It's on a peninsula looking out over the Carrick Roads, which is a very famous sailing place in Cornwall, and it has it's got water behind it, which actually somehow sets trees off beautifully. You sort of see the effect of the shape of the trees. And it's mainly famous for its rhododendrons and azaleas, but it's got some really interesting planting, so interesting throughout the year.
Sure. As a gardener yourself, is there a time of year that you most enjoy being in the garden?
I love the spring. It's such an exciting time. Things happen in England at from sort of the end of January, when the snowdrops are coming up and the crocuses, and there's just a sort of a range of different things that just pop up every day, and so you need to go out and just see what's come up that particular day, and it goes on until the end of May, when things seem to sort of slow down a bit. and you get more continuous things, but it's a great time.
Sure. I guess this is the time for planting some of the sort of summer vegetables for some.
Well, yes, it's a continual rolling thing according to what you want to produce in your garden. Actually, in England at this time of year, it's the time to plant shrubs and trees, and then they can really put their roots down. It's usually quite wet back in the UK now, so it's...
Sorry, in the springtime?
No, now, October.
Okay.
And we have a sort of dormant season from when the first frosts come, which is usually, well, it can be late October, but anyway, it's a good time to plant.
Fantastic. So as a garden designer, I suppose you have to work in fine detail to prepare your plans. Could you tell us a little bit about the actual process of how you sort of draw up these plans?
Absolutely. Well, the very first thing is an accurate survey of your site, so that you've got precisely the right dimensions of where you're going to put your flower beds, your paths, perhaps your water feature, and you also need to have a survey of the levels of the differences in height, because that's obviously very important, particularly in such a hilly place as the West Country. And you might need to put in retaining walls if you've got a too steep drop between where you want to have lawns. So it's a very complicated process.
Okay. A little bit like a sort of an architect might go about designing a building.
Totally. It's the garden equivalent of an architect's drawings.
Okay.
Survey.
So for those of us who are more amateur gardeners and perhaps haven't got a very developed garden as yet, what should we do to sort of get started and bring a bit of colour to a otherwise plain and barren patch?
Well, that's a very good question. It's impossible to answer because every single barren patch will have different microclimates, different rainfall, different wind, and it really depends on this. So that's why you need a good garden designer that can come and see and then make your plans.
Okay. Now my final question today is, lots of cultures and artistic movements have changed the course of garden design over the years. Could you tell us a little about what might make a quintessentially English garden, if there is such a thing?
Yes, well, I think actually there isn't such a thing, because it all depends on the soil, the wind, the sun, all these different features. That's why garden design, I think, is so fascinating, because there are no two gardens alike, and people have different demands from their garden. They might want a low maintenance garden. Personally, I think it's really important to have different places to sit out. According to the time of day, you might want to have breakfast in one part of the garden and an evening drink in another, and the sun will be different. All these different things go to make it.
I suppose over the course of centuries, plants have come from different areas of the world, and we have now ended up in the UK with plants from all around the world.
Absolutely, and because the sort of main port in the particularly in the 18th century was Falmouth, so a lot of the plants came in to the Helford estuary, where there were nursery gardens that actually grew them on rather than shipping them off to all other places. In the 19th century, it was in the age of the British Empire, and so plant hunters were being sent out all over the world to get new types of plants, new trees. It was very much the sort of the in thing to try and have the first variety of an unknown plant. So that's why some of the best gardens are down in Cornwall.
Okay, fascinating. Have you noticed any difference with the sort of gardens, and obviously there's a very different climate out here in Barcelona. Has it given you any kind of fresh ideas for ideas you might take back home?
Well, it's always so interesting. You look to see what is growing sort of in wild places, and if they grow in wild places. So just behind where I was yesterday evening, there was a lot of wild rosemary that was growing. And if it grows in the wild, then you can actually take all those different cultivars and put them into the place that you want to have them. So and obviously bay trees, olives, all these things. Yeah, I can't wait to see more.
Sure. Well, obviously you are based in the West Country, so my viewers can follow you on Instagram. That's Muff Dudgeon Garden Design. Now, one last question for you, Muff, before we go, which is that over the course of the centuries, lots of different artistic movements and cultures have influenced the way we design our gardens. Have we, for example, been influenced by the Italian Renaissance in the UK?
Yes, to a certain extent. I think probably the greatest British ones are more sort of reliant on the people that have gone before them. So, sort of landscape capability, Brian. Although we've always loved going to look at Italian gardens, at Spanish gardens. In the UK has always been a sort of melting pot for different cultures, so we've got influences in funny, unexpected places.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your obvious passion for your subject today. I'll be following this up in a moment with talking about some of the words that Muff has used in this interview. Again, if you want to get some visual stimulus for your garden designs, then do follow Muff on her Instagram account. And if you have another sort of area that you're interested in, maybe a career that you're looking to go into, then leave a comment under this video and I can talk to someone I know who is an expert in this field and give you some real life listening material to get acquainted with your topic.